Hi, this is David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm in studio today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
Good. Well, no, it's afternoon. A good afternoon to you, sir.
Yeah, so we're
Oh, well.
starting a little later today than normal, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll see what this brings in. Anyways, so let's start off. I wanted to talk about a little article from Recurrent. Recurrent is a company that, and most people don't know this, if you are looking at buying a used EV, they actually make, they test the batteries.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you go through this process. I've never really looked at the process of it, but it'll tell you how solid the battery is. But they did a study revealing the impact of fast charging on EV batteries. Now, this is a concern because one of the issues that came up with Hertz rented out all of these Teslas and they were driven for Uber, and they were driven a lot. If somebody's going to spend the money, they're probably driving Uber like 70 hours a week, to make up for doing that. So that was a lot of miles that were getting put on those cars on a weekly basis. I mean, people were putting 1,000 to 2,000 miles a week on those rental cars.
Amazing.
And they were having, most of those people probably didn't have a charger at home.
No.
So they were constantly going to superchargers. So there's been some talk about how this worked. Well, anyways, here's a graph of people who use frequent fast charge use versus rare fast charge use. This was all on Tesla Model 3's 6,300 vehicles. This was battery age. There was almost no statistical difference between the two is what the study came out. But here we go again. Here they did it on 4,400 Model Ys. There was a little bit. Oh, the people in this case that frequently fast charged had a little bit better battery life after 3 years.
Now, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Hey, can
Yeah.
you just, because that graph's a little hard for me to read, and it might be difficult for others to read if you can kind of scope that up. So what we're seeing there is somewhere degradation, basically somewhere between 85 and 90%. The batteries are still good. In other words, there's only been, between, what do you got, 98, 96.
So this is 2,000 days. This is 6 years out.
Right
here.
So the batteries have degraded something like 6%.
Yes,
with rapid charging. That's encouraging, really.
Yeah, and this is these tests were only done on Teslas. Okay, so
Right.
Tesla may have superior battery tech. They tend to be ahead of the curve on just about everything, in the EV space.
Yeah,
but
just listen to Sandy Monroe.
Is that what he says?
Oh yeah, he's a big fan. He says the Tesla, every time he takes one apart, he's just amazed by how far ahead they are technologically.
Well, and that's part of why there's so many people like it. But anyways, when is fast charging more likely to cause damage? So here's what it's saying: avoid fast charging in extreme heat without preconditioning your battery. Now, this is something, if you're pulling up to a charger in a Tesla and you're on a road trip, and when you're like about 20 to 30 minutes out, it'll pop up a message that says we just started, the battery is now preconditioning.
Right.
It automatically starts doing, because it knows you're going to pull off the interstate and head to that charger because you won't make it to your destination. The Tesla has kind of an interesting formula. Their AI formulates, it's like, this is the fastest you could charge here, get to the next charger, charge really quickly there, and make it home.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to completely top off at the first one and then only getting a little bit at the next one, it's figured out these calculations to make it quicker. And a lot of times those stops really aren't that long.
Yeah.
It's a lot shorter than people expect. But so preconditioning pre-cools the battery so it can accept a higher charge rate without overheating. Typically, if you set your car's navigation to a fast charging station, the battery will be preconditioned. Well, I can't speak for other brands of cars, but precondition the battery before charging in extreme cold. Often driving a bit before fast charging is enough to warm up the battery or get to the fast charger using your car's navigation. Avoid fast charging your EV at very low states or very high states of charge, since battery resistance will be higher. Now, let's see. Fiction, routinely fast charging your car from 0 to 100% is fine. Almost all EVs have software to keep it from fast charging above 80%.
Yeah.
It's better to switch to a level 2 charger for the last 20%. There are exceptions. There are exceptions if the software senses that your next destination simply won't reach it without more, but it's unusual to see that. The kilowatt rating of a fast charger controls how fast an EV can charge at. I think this is more for the separate models and batteries. Charge speed is also dependent on temperature, state of charge, and even battery age. Any amount of fast charging will cause permanent damage to your battery. Still difficult to quantify, but it's fine in small doses. But the study said it really didn't seem to matter. Fast charging in the cold will cause lithium plating. Now, I've never heard about this. EV batteries have a lot of software and hardware to protect them and ensure they're the right temperature before accepting high voltage to avoid lithium plating, which I'm not familiar with that. But
Yeah, neither am I.
I thought this was a good article.
Yeah,
I thought that was real.
That's encouraging. Speaking of batteries, long before you and I met, I started a business called Quick Bike. And what that did is we took and converted a 20-foot shipping container into a pop-up bicycle rental shop that was all solar powered. So we bought these bikes from a company that's not in existence any longer, but the batteries that came were really high quality Samsung SDI. So long story short, I have one of those bikes still that we acquired in 2016. And that's not the bike that I ride. I have another e-bike that I ride. So, but I do have this one, and I've got 2 spare batteries from it. And I thought, you know what, I should see, how they hold their charge, or can they charge? So I plugged it in over the weekend, both those batteries that have been sitting idle for 6 years, and maybe longer. And took a couple of hours, but both of those batteries just charged up fine. Now, if they'll hold their battery, that's charge has to be seen. But it makes the case for buying, making sure you get good quality batteries. And these happen to be, my opinion, good quality batteries. Samsung SDI. I don't know if they make e-bike batteries anymore, but they did a good job on these.
Well, I suspect we probably do. I don't know about Samsung. I know LG's big in the battery business, and but it's interesting to see how some of the batteries degrade and some of them don't. I mean, we talked about in battery storage, when they're not being used in the EVs, the batteries don't degrade at all. And but that's a different usage, and that's coming right off the grid. But I don't know what rate those batteries are charging up, but I'm sure it's quite variable. Anyways, let's get on to our next story. This is about Xiaomi. So I'm going to say it correctly now. I had some Chinese speakers tell me how to correctly pronounce this.
And believe me, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. And I'm glad for all the listeners who corrected me on a lot of the things I mispronounced. I'm still going to call cattle and not CATL.
Well,
it's just
it's an abbreviation.
Right. But anyways, here is the Xiaomi electric car. We covered this a little bit later, but they're undercutting Tesla by thousands of dollars. They're undercutting Porsche by even more. I mean, that really looks like a Porsche Taycan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really designed to look like that, more so than it's designed to look like a Tesla.
Yeah, in fact, the Chinese call it the Porsche rice or Porsche rice.
Yeah. So they've had these crazy sales, but deliveries have officially started, but some people will be waiting up to 30 months for their SU7. I keep wanting to say SUV. I've had other people intimate that maybe this is supposed to be a Sukhoi 7, but because Sukhoi is the Russian aircraft manufacturer.
Right.
But it is just a weird name. It is confusing because you see SU, you think, oh, it's a Sport Utility 7, right?
Yeah.
And Um, it's kind of a comical thing. I had one of my tennis friends actually sent me a message a couple days ago that she has an Aptera on pre-order,
Oh,
and
excellent.
yes,
If she ever gets it,
and
hopefully she
for
will.
Nebraska, yeah, and you know the Aptera people are so hopeful. I just don't know if they're really going to get what
Yeah.
they do to get money together. But supposedly they're delivering like 55 Apteras to Saudi Arabia,
Yeah, I
and
just saw that.
I'm not sure exactly how they're doing that. How they're
Gold,
getting them
gold plated
manufactured.
or something like that. I mean, there was something
Yeah,
about gold or gold paint or something. So
I just didn't, quite get the whole gist of what's going on there. I have another article. I'm not going to post it up here because it's got some annoying videos on the page
all right.
that I can't stop. Anyways, so 38 Tesla Cybertrucks that have been hit the market have been recalled, and
Well,
some work's
technically,
been
all
done.
of them have been recalled.
Well, all of them, that's all that have been produced so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've been recalled, and let's see, an accelerator pedal cover could come loose
Yeah.
and potentially pin the pedal at full throttle. Well, that would be very bad.
The
It
bad
potentially
news,
could.
right?
It hasn't happened, but they're saying it's something that could be a possibility.
Yeah.
So, anyways, they're doing a recall, and this is one of the rare. So, normally in a Tesla recall, what happens is you find out about it a little bit after your Tesla's been fixed because they did a software update over the wire. But this is actually causing you to have to bring your vehicle in.
Yeah.
Apparently, the repair takes 35 seconds to do.
Yeah, I think it's a rivet or something like that they put in there to hold it.
It's incredibly simple,
Yeah,
and
and I'm sure annoying for the owner. You know what?
the
But I mean, if you're near, well, I assume can be done by the Rangers. I would think that a Tesla Ranger could come out to the house and put that
probably
pop rivet in,
probably
and it's all done. Yeah.
so the NHTSA says this issue was caused by soap being used in the installation process.
Oh,
For such,
to make it fit quicker. I bet.
I don't know, for such a critical part, owners would think that major work needs to be done in order to fix the defect. A video made the rounds on social media shows that Tesla's guides for the repair for this issue is very simple. It takes about 35 seconds to do. They called it a drilling jig.
Yeah.
The orange piece of plastic they used to align a power drill bit to go straight through the pedal cover and the pedal itself. The tech then positions a metal rivet in the hole, stamps the rivet to secure the pedal cover onto the pedal.
Yep.
So that's all there is for that. I mean, it's not like it was something crazy and there's like a huge expense that Tesla's having to spend thousands of
Yeah.
dollars to fix these. They're spending thousands of dollars across all 4,000 Cybertrucks, but it's not really, what you think. So here's an article. I know, Bill, I know you bought a little bit of Rivian, and I like following Rivian on the Friday
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
And
New
I don't think
low.
Rivian's going anywhere near all-time lows. And right now it's at $9.18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I
there's
bought
finally
it
some positive news.
$10.
Yep, there you go. Well, Motley Fool is suggesting that they've bottomed out, as has Adib on Friday. He's suggested that
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
And we're in a boon or a spot where it should, it
Begin
should
going
go
up.
back up.
Yeah.
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 So, and I think highly of Rivian in that there's one key piece, and it's this
Oh, and
phrase right here. Amazon is a large shareholder of Rivian. They own
yeah.
17% of the company. And Rivian makes money on all of the electric vans. And they've ordered 100,000, of which only 13,500 so far have been
Have been
delivered.
delivered, right.
Yeah.
Did,
So regardless of how you feel about their trucks, SUVs, their new SUVs coming to the market, they're going to be around for a while
well,
building
yeah,
for Amazon.
and this is why Barclays has just given them a positive rating. They said, yeah, they've gone through some issues and things, but they're still. It's a Barclays says this is a long-term hold, so I'm going to be patient with mine. So yeah.
All right, so I got something kind of on a short-term note here. So New York City has been putting in curbside EV charging, and there's been some question of whether this is a good solution or not. But New York City is a place where everybody doesn't have a parking spot,
Yeah.
and that's one of the problems with being able to charge an EV is you really need to own a parking spot. Now this looks like it's probably a level 2 charger. It could be a level 3.
Yeah,
I'm not sure,
I don't
but
think
I would
so. It
guess they
would have
put,
to have a bigger service to it.
yeah, so it's probably a level 2 is what I'd estimate in this picture, but they don't really get into it. But um, New York City began installing public curbside EV charging stations in 2021 as a pilot program, expected to end in July. Demand has been strong. They've had 72% average utilization of 72%. Now they've only put in 100. They've only put in 100 chargers. That's not very many, but
No, that's a
the
pilot.
72% is impressive considering that ICE vehicles block access to the chargers more than 20% of the time. There was
Yeah.
2,200 parking tickets issued to ICE vehicles for blocking the chargers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the chargers have done very well. They've had 99.9% uptime, and that I find fascinating. One of our viewers on YouTube was talking about, he lives in Seattle, and said that
Mhm.
thieves have started breaking apart the EV chargers for
Yep.
copper. Yeah,
Yep.
and I've been a victim at least a dozen times or more of having air conditioners victimized for copper. And an air conditioning condenser, well, I could get them because I had great rates, and with because I was replacing as many as 50 air conditioning units a year, but at one time.
Is that
And
was that here since you've been here, or is that
no, this was in
stay
Tennessee. This is when I
yeah.
lived in Tennessee. But I'll just tell you, it would cost, if say $1,500 to put in a replacement air conditioning condenser, and the drug addict that had stolen the copper probably was getting $20
Yeah.
for the recycled copper. And
Yeah.
just it really seemed like a lot of work, chance of getting electrocuted, a lot of stuff like that for doing that. But it really seemed at one point that just having any kind of real estate sign in the yard was an
Was
inviting
an
somebody.
invitation. Yeah.
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 Metal cages to go over the AC units cost about 300-400 bucks. And I've even seen people go through the trouble of welding or cutting the welds.
Cutting them, yeah. Taking
Yeah,
those little
to get in.
handheld grinders and
Yeah,
cutting,
but I'm like,
yeah,
how much work did you have to do?
to get
You couldn't
such a
have just
paltry
gone
amount
to
of
work at a same day labor or same day pay labor place,
yeah.
would have netted you more money than that,
Yeah.
so it was really quite frustrating. But apparently the ones in New York City aren't experiencing that, thankfully. And let's see what I want to show next. So my next one is from Kelly Blue Book. This is talking a
Okay.
little bit about EV sales growing slower. Now, I want to put an emphasis on this. I hear this all the time, that EV sales are falling. No,
Yeah.
EV sales aren't falling. They are growing slower.
Yeah.
So EVs were growing some years at, doubling the pace of what they were the year before. Last year it was like 60% year over year. This year the number has dropped considerably. In the first quarter, it was only 2.6% more growth than the first quarter of last year. Or I should say, not more growth, but they bought 268,000 EVs in the United States in the first quarter of 24, which was 2.6% more than in the first quarter of the previous year. Now, that being said, interest rates went up again last year.
Hmm.
Okay. And then a couple of the other issues that come up that nobody ever brings into these equations is how the Section 179 deduction keeps changing. And so it was 100% 2 years ago. It was 80% last year. It's 60% this year. And that makes a huge effect on whether people buy the Model X, the Model S, the EVs that are over about $60,000. And it really affects full-size pickup trucks. And if you really want to see the effect of this, you should go look and see where Ford and GM pickup trucks are all sitting in Detroit without customers. And
Mm.
part of this is because the tax incentives for, the Ford and GM trucks dried up. Well, EVs were enjoying some of that too. Okay, so there's a
Yeah.
couple of things in that, and that's why you're seeing vehicles in some cases backing up in some of these locations. So I don't think people try to say that everything about EVs is controversial, which is interesting. I don't know what's really that controversial about it, other than the fact that people get bad information. The
It's a
slow growth may
car.
be a sign that EVs are almost mainstream cars in parts of the country. Segment growth typically slows as volume increases. Well, some parts of the country, like California, which, by the way, California has bigger EV incentives, right? Or it did. So some of the incentives are for people below, even the government ones are for people.
Oop,
And here I come. I'm back.
there you go. You're
I'm
back.
back. Yeah. But California, the state ones are for people even below a lower threshold than the
Right.
federal.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, a lot of times people who are below those thresholds won't qualify to buy a new car anyways.
Right.
So some of the numbers are off. I will say I saw something recently where Hawaii, for a state that has no incentives whatsoever for doing anything with EVs, has the highest EV adoption amongst states that don't have any incentives.
Yeah. I wonder
And
what's a gallon of gasoline in California? It's over $7 now for a gallon of gasoline. So I
it's
wonder what it is in
crazy.
Hawaii. And there's a big driver. Not electricity is expensive in in Hawaii too.
And
But
California.
yeah. And so what people doing the math in their heads and saying, I can charge it at home. It's convenient. And the car is so much more. I mean, what people forget is a gasoline engine. 70, 75, 80% of the money of that dollar bill, you just thrown away. It doesn't get you anywhere. It ends up as heat. It ends up as friction. It ends up as air pollution. On the other hand, 80 cents to 90 cents of the electricity, a dollar's worth of electricity you put in that EV takes you somewhere. And I think that's the mathematics that people have to start thinking about, is that one, you're throwing away, you might as well rip the dollar up and throw it in the air, and in EV, you're getting most of what you paid for. It's just simple physics.
Well, and that's
There's my preaching.
yeah, no, I understand. Well, there's no question that's going on. But in Hawaii, one of the things too, the average income is far higher than on the mainland,
Well,
and
it
the
has
people
to
buying
be.
EVs probably are not qualifying for any electric vehicle incentives. Because I hear this all the time about how everything's driven by the government's subsidies, and I look around a lot of the people I know that drive Teslas and stuff like that,
Yeah, it's
and
not
I can tell you, none of them qualified to get the $7,500 rebates because they made too much money.
yeah.
And they're either in IT
Well,
or they're in medicine or
yeah,
something,
you
and they're
you
above
you
those
hang with
thresholds.
a more upscale group than I do. So
Maybe, but I'm just telling you that it's interesting to see that you know. Now I will say this: I suspect most of them may still have a gas car at home in some way.
oh
Some of them
sure.
don't. One of my friends has 3 Teslas, and he doesn't have a gas car in Nebraska anymore.
All right, good for them. I love to hear that.
Yeah, now he's got a son in Texas that's got a Toyota minivan and a Model Y.
Yeah.
And he drives the minivan a lot because he doesn't want people to see the Model Y. He's really, it's not,
Well,
he's
it's
just,
Texas.
yeah.
Sorry,
I don't,
Texas.
I don't think, I don't think that's his reasoning. He doesn't want people to realize, what his background is. The funny thing is he's in medical school. So
Yeah.
I really don't know what he wants people to think.
Yeah.
But anyways, um, let's see. So one of the other parts of this article is Tesla's losing ground. Now we know that supposedly their market share of EVs in the United States dropped from 51% to 51%, down from 61% a year earlier. So some other companies are managing to sell some EVs in the United States. Well, it used to be Tesla was kind of the only one, to
Sure.
a degree. There really
Yeah.
wasn't any competition.
Yep.
And so over time, there should be more. And we do know that I see a lot of people hoping Musk will step down and appoint a full-time CEO
Yeah.
for Tesla, but Tesla's really his baby. He does all these other things, but at Tesla, it really is his main thing. But
Well,
it,
talk to some of his investors. They think he needs to be getting serious about Tesla and stop playing around with Twitter and
yeah.
that whole area.
So here's something kind of interesting. Cadillac achieved a 499% year-over increase in EV sales due to robust sales of its Lyriq SUV. Mercedes EV sales were up 66%. BMW had a 62% increase. Audi had a 28% increase this is year over year for
Right.
these cars. And those are all cars that are definitely out there to compete directly with, the nicer Teslas. And to be fair, they're probably nicer cars. They may not be as nice in the technology inside,
Right.
but
Yeah.
as far as just appointments and everything like that, these are nicer cars for the same money. Let's see. 9 manufacturers recorded 50% year-over-year growth in EV sales in the first quarter. BMW, Cadillac, Ford, Hyundai, Kia, Lexus, Mercedes, Rivian, and VinFast. Small numbers can make the growth look dramatic. VinFast sold only 921 cars in the previous quarter compared to, they only sold 921 cars in the first quarter compared to 110 in the first quarter of 23.
Well, there you go. There's a 1,000% increase.
Right. Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal. That justifies their $30 billion market cap right
Yeah.
there, those 900 sales.
900 cars. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you now, once again, those are US numbers. I mean, VinFast
Right.
is big in Vietnam and
Yeah.
they're probably big in some other countries, but they're not big here in the US. But then my next story jumps right into Tesla slashes price of its best-selling vehicles around the world as it looks to combat a slump in sales.
Yeah.
Now, what nobody ever mentions is the fact that Tesla's profitable on every car it sells, and they keep driving down the cost of manufacturing their cars, so they can keep lowering the prices. They can play the price game for quite a while, where everybody else isn't in the same boat. And Tesla on Friday announced it's cutting the price of the Y, the X, the older Model S. I assume they meant just the Model S. I don't know why they called it older. The EV maker soon rolled out discounts to China and then Germany, and it's coming to other places, but they're ranging anywhere, from $1,000 to a couple $1,000s on each car. And I'm sure we'll see the same discounts here in the States. Tesla's been at the center of a price war. It's been fueled by cheaper electric vehicles from China, many that are rapidly making inroads to markets previously ruled by Tesla. They actually refer to Tesla as a California company, which I guess it is, even though
technically
they've sort of been moving over to Texas.
Yeah, there's Texas, then there's Delaware, and then there's California. So yeah. Hey,
Right.
let me ask the listeners here while we're on the subject of Tesla. Tesla has, among the things they've cut is they've cut the price of the full service or the full self-driving, right? The FSD to $8,000. But they've also cut the cost of the subscription service by half, down to $99 a month. So my question is, Russ Gerber, Gerber Investments, Kawasaki, whatever, has said that he thinks it makes more sense to do one or the other, right? So I'm asking, does it make sense if you were in the market to pay $8,000 to get full self-driving, or just simply to pay the $99 a month over, let's say, a 5-year period? What would you do?
Well, I think in my own mind, the $99 makes sense if it's only going to be, it depends on how many years you plan on holding the vehicle.
Yeah.
But if you pay for the $8,000, that passes on to the next owner. So it really has some advantage by paying for that. The only thing is, I suspect it'll come down in price again at some point.
Yeah.
So that makes it a tough question. And I don't think it's really that bad, even on buying a used Tesla. If you wanted full self-driving, you can add that for $100 a month. It doesn't seem like a bad deal. Whereas I certainly wouldn't want to buy a used one and then go to pay $8,000 extra for
$1,000
that.
to upgrade it, or have
Yeah.
somebody back at Tesla headquarters hit a button and make it live, so.
Yeah. So here's another article. This one is about Ford. Ford targets Tesla owners with EV conquest incentive. What they're trying to do is they're trying to incentivize people with $1,500 incentive rebate to Tesla owners. Doesn't require trade-in, but simply show they own a Tesla. They get a $1,500 discount by buying a Ford. And now, let's see if it's saying this as specifically for Lightning. It does say it's designed to sway them towards the F-150 Lightning and the Mach-E. Also targets other car makers with similar offers.
No.
Ford has introduced several strategic incentives. Let's see. They've got people they've done for Chevy Camaro, Dodge Charger, Dodge Challenger. This offer encourages them to consider the Ford Mustang as their next vehicle purchase. I mean, it's not something unique. I like the look of the Mach-E. It's a decent vehicle. They're very recognizable when you see them going down the road.
Yeah, we've got a few of them I've seen around here in town. So.
Oh yeah, there's lots of them around Omaha.
Yeah. Well, even here in Papillion.
Mm-hmm. So. Let's see. The Tesla Competitive Conquest Bonus Cash. The incentive is available through July 8th. So apparently that's a short term. And it can be own or lease any Tesla model from 2008 onward. Anyways, that's a interesting thing that they're trying to do to bring.
And General Motors, if you check on the website today, General Motors has had a very good quarter, and it exceeded Wall Street projections. So, in fact,
nice.
a couple of writers, automotive writers, said, something to the effect, GM, what dinosaur? Because they're doing fairly well. So,
yeah, well, and they said their EVs with Ultium tech and went up in sales 20% year over year.
Yeah.
So they were pleased with that. Of course, they were way behind all those others that were 50%, but still. Yeah. It's still 20% is a big improvement. I mean, it's huge.
Well, it's good to see.
Yeah, it is. It is. So my next article is about Biden's EV policy will slow innovation. And this is a weird take on what's going on. I think I'm not sure how this is supposed to play out. Had Biden not taken any actions, the marketplace would have progressed in the transition from gas-powered cars to EVs. That is, if American consumers wanted EVs, would have progressed farther. If he wanted EVs to be produced by American car companies, after discussion with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, the White House issued the following statement. Today, Ford, GM, and Stellantis announced their shared aspiration to achieve sales of 40 to 50% of annual U.S. volumes of electric vehicles, battery electric, fuel cell, and plug-in hybrid by 2030. I think that's probably, we talked about EV adoption. They don't really have to pledge or aspire. We know from the technology adoption rates and how 5 years ago in California they were about 5%, and now the whole U.S. is beyond 5%. Yeah. That in reality, by 28, 29, we should be past 25%, and that's just in battery electric vehicles. That's not including plug-in hybrids. The thing is, plug-in hybrids seem to have come out a little prematurely. A lot of the manufacturers came out with them in 2014, and then most of them gave up by 2016, with a few stragglers that gave up in 2019. Well, yeah, and now they're starting to yeah, and now they're bringing some back, and so you'll have some of that. So I don't think that 40 to 50%. That's not like shoving anything down their throat. I think market conditions.
Toyota just announced. What's their best-selling car in the U.S.? Camry, right?
Is it? I thought it was a RAV4, but that's.
Oh well, now
it could be the Camry.
Sedan,
it could be the
not
Camry.
An SUV, but a sedan.
Okay.
The Camry. They are no longer going to build gasoline only. all future Camrys are going to be at least a hybrid.
Oh, did you? I don't know if you've seen the MPG for the 25 Camry. It's like 44 city and highway.
Yeah.
That's really high. I used to
Well,
own
that's,
a Camry.
basically that's at least what, 50%, maybe higher than the standard gas model. Most of those get
Oh yeah,
what, 30 miles, something like that, 35
right.
miles an hour.
I had one in the late 80s, so that was a long time ago, and I don't know if I got. I probably got 20 MPG in it,
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, that's a huge difference thinking about how much the improvement is. And of course, if you cut the gas mileage, or if you double the gas mileage, you cut the emissions in half too, and the pollution
Yeah.
and all that.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
well, except it doesn't cut down on the tire usage, right? Because people are obviously
No.
hot rodding in their Camrys and
Hot rodding in a
burning.
Camry?
Oh yeah, yeah, and spinning the wheels and you know throwing tire particles in the air. That story, man. That the story's
Oh,
never gonna die. Or that I still getting ones about how the batteries or how the tires are all full of pollution. It's like you really read that article?
yeah.
No, the numbers were so goofy. But California took Biden's goal and upped it. California said all new cars sold in the state must be EVs or other zero emissions by 2035. I don't know if, even where they're at. I just have a hard time fathoming in 10, 11 years them hitting 100% on that. I can see them getting damn close because we know you know, how things have progressed in the Scandinavian countries. Okay. But there's a big difference between reaching 90% and reaching 100%.
Yeah. Oh, it's always the last
Squeezing out
10% the hardest. Yeah.
squeezing us those
Yeah.
last ones. I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably, like we talked about the Star Trek episode where, what was it? What was it? Captain Kirk got in a Ford Mustang that was 300 years
Well, it was
old or something like that.
before he became captain, when he was still a
Yeah.
young pre-academy cadet,
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. 300-year-old
Yeah.
Ford Mustang. So I think, but of course that would still be a used car, but I'm just saying that it's a challenge to make it work
Yeah.
with all cars. So I'm just not real sure about it. And the one thing that it's not so much the passenger cars, it's the commercial side of things. And when I say the commercial side, I'm talking more like the trucks that go and pick up from the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach and places like that and are hauling goods into the interior of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be interesting to see where that all plays out. Because in the car space, you and I can clearly see where things are headed, right?
Yeah.
In the truck space, it's far more ambiguous. There's no question that it's ambiguous in the trucking space. So that's where I kind of see the challenge being is how they get away from diesel and all that. And we've talked about how I've helped consult for a company that's got something that may double the range of diesel. There's a lot of things that in theory, and that'd still be a battery electric or a plug-in hybrid,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
type setup, but it wouldn't be as much as the ones now. And it'd just be interesting to see because all of these things are reducing pollution. They're all reducing carbon emissions. They just may not be doing it in the way some people envision.
Well, that's the nature of technology,
Right. It is.
Oh,
And,
well,
sometimes you work on a goal and if you work hard enough at it, sometimes the goal gets hit from a way you
remember
didn't
that
suspect.
the original steam vessels were something
Yes.
that moved oars, and then
Hmm.
they went to paddles on the side, and then eventually in the mid 1800s we went to center screws, right? And now
Hmm.
they're talking about, who was it, the Chinese supposedly have a submarine that is powered by lasers. I don't know exactly how that works, but there's a guy that just won a patent for a non-propulsive space system. So it's a system that somehow uses electrical energy to move the spacecraft, but it doesn't propel it So again, over my head, but there's the progress we're making. We used
Yeah,
to blow things up with crude gunpowder to move things, and now we're talking about using light and just electrons, to move things through the air. So making
that
progress.
that'd be a pretty interesting propulsion system.
Yeah.
So then what you'd probably have is you'd probably start tracking them by a heat signature.
Yeah. Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
you'd track it by a heat anomalies in the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Well,
let's see.
by the way, speaking of that, there is a guy here in Omaha that's a retired I may have mentioned this before. It's a retired Air Force officer, meteorology officer, who has developed a system that, again, uses some form of electromagnetism to move this thing, but instead of pushing electrons or ions or whatever out the back, seems to create, for want of a better definition on my part, seems to create some kind of a space bubble in front of it and moves and sucks his spacecraft, sort of V-shaped thing, sucks it towards that. And it just keeps, the bubble keeps out further and the thing keeps trying to follow it. So I don't
It sounds
know.
like the thing with the horse with the carrot on a stick out in
Yeah,
front,
exactly. Yeah,
trying to
exactly.
make the horse
Exactly.
chase the
Yep.
carrot.
Yep. It's not the carrot, it's not the manure coming out of the back of the horse
Yeah.
that's moving it forward, right? It's the carrot in
Right.
front. So, yeah.
Let me see. So my last article for today is map shows the U.S. states with the most electric vehicles. Now, in theory, this should mostly go along with population, right? So we'll see where we get
Not
here.
necessarily.
No, not necessarily. So let's see where we get to some more. Here's the map. So
Yep.
dark green. This is um, this is for EVs per 100,000 people in the state.
Yep.
And let's see.
Look
So
at those
California
two.
has not.
Wyoming and North Dakota.
Yeah,
Yeah.
North Dakota has 640 per 100,000.
Yeah.
Wyoming has 840. You wouldn't think people would be driving EVs in Wyoming, but
And
what's the one thing that they all have at home that's convenient? They all have electricity.
they all have electricity. Yeah.
And it is a long damn way to get gas when you live in some of these states. Now, North Dakota is not so bad. Well, I lived in Grand Forks, which is up here,
right?
But and it's a modern city, or I should say, it's a modern village of about 80,000 people if you count the air base.
Yeah.
But let's see what we got here. Washington State only has 104 per 100,000. That was less than I would have thought. Oregon's not as big as I would have thought.
That surprised me because every time I go out there to visit our daughter, you see every third or fourth car, it seems, is a Tesla. And about every 3 or 4 out of 4 of those are white. Very popular color back there. So yeah,
I'm kind of actually wondering about this. So according to up here in the article, it says California boasts 2,300 EVs per 100,000. And Hawaii is second with 1,372 per 100,000.
That's amazing.
So I'm not sure exactly if this map is from an older date, because the map doesn't generate the same numbers. It has 903 here versus 2,300. Washington came in third, whereas here it only has 104, 1,300 per 100,000. They lead in the EV market, changing its policy in 2022, which aimed to oversee sales of passenger cars, light-duty trucks, and medium-duty vehicles to become 100% electric by 2035. Oregon was fourth. Nevada was fifth.
Out of curiosity.
Well, it had 149 here, but it shows pretty dark here in the picture. So let's see where we get here. So, and then here it says North Dakota only has 82 per 100,000. Oh, the state only has 640 electric vehicles registered, the least in the U.S., despite a tax credit incentive for citizens purchasing EVs. Well, I'm sure there's no Tesla showroom up there.
No.
And the car dealers.
Go to Minneapolis or something for that.
Right. Mississippi was really low.
Yeah.
Now, that's not surprising. Mississippi's a very rural state,
Yeah. And
very rural, and it's also
yeah,
the poorest. It's the
yeah,
poorest and the
poverty.
fattest.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. West Virginia was really low. Let's see where we get something more interesting. Well, it really didn't get into explaining their map, and that is kind of dumb. States with the most electric vehicles. Well, obviously there's more than 903.62. That doesn't make sense.
So who are they crediting for the
0.62.
the map?
This is get the data. Let me just see. It opened up a PDF. I'm opening the PDF, see if I get something here. It won't show up on the screen right away. I'm just kind of curious what it gives me. Oh, it gives me a spreadsheet. So that it's 903,000 for California. I don't know. These numbers are kind of strange. Let me just go down to Texas. Texas has 149,000. So here's what's bizarre is on some of these. Okay, so on California, this is thousands. So it's 903,000 cars. On Texas, it's 149,000 cars. Somehow in North Dakota, it's only 640 cars. So it just has really weird ways of displaying the data. Florida has 168,000 cars that are EVs. That's just really weird. So Nebraska has 4.57 cars. So you own one of them.
I own one of them.
Yeah, and no, but that's got to be 4,500.
Your tennis friends own the rest.
Right, and they own the rest. Yeah, but apparently it's 4,500 there. So I thought that was quite interesting how that is kind of a deceptive thing. I mean, I don't understand why they would express so many here. Yeah, whoever made this is probably quite high, or intoxicated. I just sometimes I'm really curious where some of these articles come from. We basically curate the news, right, Bill? We don't necessarily make the news. We report on it. We report on the news, and sometimes the news that we're fed is really goofy, and that one
leaves somewhat to be desired. Hey, let me put a plug in too, before we wrap up here.
Sure.
It's Earth Day, of course, was yesterday. Here in Omaha. Omaha's Earth Day celebration will take place at the usual spot down Elmwood Park. Locals will probably know where that is. We've got several of the car dealerships here in town are bringing, I think we're up to well over 20 electric vehicles, including my little used Fiat, of course. So if you're interested in living in the greater Omaha area, you'd like to see a whole bunch of electric cars in one spot and talk to owners or talk to the dealers, we'll be there from noon till whatever it is, 4 o'clock, something like that. So come on out to Elmwood Park. Locals will know where that is, and come chat with us about EVs. Thank you.
All right. Anyways, Bill, thanks for doing the show today, folks. We see lots of you chiming in, especially from Twitter. Always have lots of people watching on Twitter.
Yeah.
Anyways, we sincerely appreciate y'all listening to us rant, and y'all have a great day. And we'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow with Mike Herzog and with Bill on Thursday. All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks
All right.